Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Big Idea. I am your host, Dr. Jeffrey Hanna with Clear Chiropractic, where we talk about how a little problem where the base of your head meets the rest of your spine can actually have very big impacts that affect your health, your quality of life, and your ability to actually enjoy the things that you really want to do over the course of your life in ways that you would never realize or think are connected with your neck. And in this particular one here, I'm going to do a little bit of a overview on a particular topic that somebody's reached out to me and asked, okay, can you talk a little bit about the subject of concussion and how it relates to the problem that we have right up at the base of the head? Now, a lot has been made of the severity and the nature of, concussion over the course of the last decade or so. It used to be that it was something that was thought, oh, okay, yep, if you had a sports injury or if you had a car accident or something like that, that you could normally just shake it off, just make sure you don't go to sleep right away. But what we found is that we're finding that there are an increasingly number of complex ways that concussion is showing up in people's lives, and it's not necessarily in ways that people would think. So among the more common things right off the bat that people are aware of is dizziness, vertigo, headaches, migraines, and it's going to come immediately after, a person's had some kind of a head or neck injury. But there's a lot of other symptoms that people do not initially relate or recognize are actually potentially connected to some kind of a traumatic nerve system injury. Brain fog, inability to concentrate, mood interruptions or imbalances, shall we say, alternating depression, anxiety, an internal sense of things are just simply put not feeling right. Chronic fatigue, but in the same breath, not sleeping well, or that is you're waking up in the morning feeling even more exhausted than you were than when you had gone to bed. Your body is simply put not recovering, and everything is working, if you would, at a loss. These are some of the very common ways that concussion can actually show up in a person's health and well-being. But what do we as human beings do? We oftentimes put it down to, oh, it's just stress. Oh, it is, I'm getting older. Oh, there's nothing that I can do about it. And unfortunately, those are myths. In fact, what I want to do right off the bat here in this particular video is address 5 of the most common myths as they relate to the topic of concussion. Number 1 is that a lot of times things that we think of as possibly being concussion, they're actually not. Instead, they're whiplash. And I'm going to talk about this one a little bit more in the video. It's like, Jeff, what are you talking about here? Remember, we talk about the way that injuries to the neck affect your overall health and well-being. The symptoms of a concussion and the symptoms of whiplash are near identical. It's impossible to tell the difference between the two based on symptomatology alone. So a great many people, even though they're getting their head looked at, they're not having their neck looked at. And as a consequence, many of these problems can persist when otherwise they don't need to. Myth number 2, you have to lose consciousness to have a concussion. That is simply put not true. You can have a variety of different degrees. Yes, a grade 3 concussion, you are stone cold knocked out. A grade 2 concussion is what's considered where you're woozy, you're seeing stars, different things like that. And where you might lose a little bit of memory or feeling a bit groggy on the other side, but you didn't completely black out. A grade 1 concussion, this happens when we have had some kind of, again, head-neck injury, but it didn't necessarily produce any immediate symptoms. And that actually brings us right away to myth number 3. And that is that you know you have a concussion because you immediately have problems. That also is not true. You see, many people, whether they've had a sports injury, whether they have had a car accident, even a relatively minor fender bender, the impact of that force, if there's enough adrenaline that surges through your body in that moment, you may not have any symptoms whatsoever. And those symptoms may take time to manifest. They can take anywhere between a few hours, a few days, or even a few weeks. One of my colleagues and mentors many years ago was involved in a car accident. And approximately 2 weeks after the event, he started noticing he was having a lot of brain fog, and he was having a little bit of odd headaches, and he's not a headachy kind of person, and he was feeling sore and achy in different parts of his body. And it took him another 2 weeks to connect the two, that the reason he was experiencing his symptoms was because there was a lag effect from when he had this injury. So even the experts, we as human beings first, we like to think in terms of linearities. A causes B, and B immediately precedes A, if that's the case. However, because this lag period exists, oftentimes we can start to experience different kinds of symptoms and not think of the injury that precipitated them because it happened a certain period of time in the past before. Fourth thing then that we want to have a look at. There is no one thing when it comes to solving concussion or whiplash for that matter. As much as I wish could say, snap of the fingers, problem solved. Just do this rehabilitation. Just see this specialist. Just take these supplements. Just do this therapy, this activity, whatever it's going to be. And it's going to allow all of your neurology to be able to heal the way that it needs to. Unfortunately, these are oftentimes very, very complicated kinds of situations because you have injury to the neural tissue. What that means then is it means then that A, your body needs the opportunity to make sure that it is physically capable of healing. That is, all of the gates are open, that all of the proper blood flow is able to go to and from so that that body is able to repair as good as it possibly can. You need to make sure that chemically, that is your nutrition, but also the things you're exposing yourself to environmentally, are on point. Neural tissue is one of the slowest healing tissues in the entire body. It does heal, but you do need to make sure then you're supplying the right amounts of the raw ingredients that are necessary for that healing to take place. Number 3 in that regard then is being kind to yourself. So I want you to imagine that what you've got is you've got a 6-lane highway that goes through the middle of town. And let's say that there's some kind of a natural disaster that has happened and it's taken out 4 of those roads. So normally you'd have 3 lanes of traffic going one way, 3 lanes of traffic going the other way. And let's say even at rush hour, that traffic is able to move because there are enough lanes. But now you're down to 1 traffic lane going in either direction. So what that means is it means that if you've had some kind of injury that has reduced your body's neural processing capacity, you may be metaphorically down to only having 1 lane in either direction of what used to be a 3-lane highway. And yes, I repeat, it can heal, it can get better, but it does mean for a significant period of time, your capacity to be able to do things is going to be diminished. And it means you're not able to, unfortunately, do the things that you would like to do. But by doing the right things, by making sure you're working with the right specialists so that your head and your neck are able to heal, that you're making sure that your nutrition is on point, and making sure that you're also doing the right kinds of neuro-rehabilitative activities, whether with a physical therapist, whether with a neuro-optometrist, with whoever it needs to be, a concussion specialist, that what's happening is you are gradually retraining your brain, retraining your nerves, and increasing your adaptive capacity, repairing those roadways so that you can get back to doing at least as much of the good stuff that you had always been doing before. Now, the fifth myth is that you can see a concussion on an MRI. No, you can't. When a person is, because sporting is the most common incidents where we hear about, see concussion in action, and people are rushed away to the hospital and they say they had an MRI and they said the MRI was clear. Well, what they're looking for there is they're looking for, from the collision, are there broken bones? Are there bleedings? Is there a hematoma? Are there complications with the neurovascular structures that can be then, causing some very, very significant, potentially dangerous or even lethal health conditions? But you cannot see a concussion on an MRI in and of itself. What a concussion represents is what's called a functional neurological disorder. And what this is this is something that has affected the way that your system works. Much in the same way that a virus or malware on your computer, yeah, on the outside, the computer looks just fine. But on the inside, it's absolutely affecting the way that it should normally be working. So people can get very, very frustrated. They think, I'm experiencing all of these different symptoms, but my scans, my x-rays, my CTs, my MRIs, where all that sort of stuff, everybody keeps saying that everything is normal. No, it doesn't mean normal. It means there is no sign of pathology. It means that whatever you're experiencing falls in that functional neurological category. So good, you can rule out the dangerous, scary stuff that's going to kill you. But that doesn't mean that you can rule out all of the other possibilities. And this then brings us back to what we had said in the very beginning about how the symptoms of a concussion and the symptoms of whiplash are darn near identical. In fact, I pose this for you as a challenge. Is it possible where you can injure your head without injuring your neck at the exact same time? Now, granted, that might be possible with direct blunt force trauma. Something like somebody taking a baseball bat literally to your head. But that is not the way that most kinds of concussion or head or neck or body injuries happen. Nope. They happen in the act of falling. They happen in the act of slipping, sliding, getting tackled, or in instances such as a car accident where not only does our head fly forward, but guess what? Our neck also flies forward at the exact same time. And the way that we are anatomically designed is that we have our brain completely encapsulated within of our skull. But then what we have is we have a tail on that brain that represents our spinal cord. That descends down through our neck, which is the most flexible area of our entire spine. In other words, we're dealing with a heavy flower sitting on top of a weak stem. And where that head goes, your neck will follow. And what it also means is you have any sudden acceleration, deacceleration kind of injury. Not only does your head go snap like this, but guess what? So does your neck. But there's a critical junction where that skull meets that neck, and that is the area that is under the greatest amount of shear and strain. We call it the craniocervical junction, aka the upper cervical spine. The top vertebra in your neck is called an atlas. The second vertebra in your neck is called an axis. They provide 50% of all the movement of your head and your neck. They protect your brain stem, which is responsible for all the vital life signals from your brain down to your body back up to your brain. It's also the gateway for all of the fluid that's going up, down, and circulating within your brain. In other words, it's a little bit important. But when we have the head and the neck injuries, what it also means is that this is the area that's most likely to be injured given any of these circumstances. And again, it does not have to be just the direct head trauma. It can even be something along the lines of falling on your tailbone. So I do this as a silly little explanation, but I think it kind of gets the point home. How fast do you fall? And most everybody's had some kind of a fall at their life. A slip, a trip, learning to walk, learning to ride a bike. You get the idea. It goes on and on like that. How fast do you fall? What is the speed of gravity? Or more appropriately, what is the acceleration of gravity? It is approximately 22.5 miles per hour. Now, 22.5 miles per hour, let me put it this way. You've got the Olympic sprinters who are going to do a 100-meter dash in under 10 seconds. That is approximately the exact same speed, 22.5 miles an hour. Now, what I want you to imagine be one of two possibilities here. Even if you're not an Olympic sprinter, I want you to imagine this. I want you to get a running head start and run headfirst into a wall. How good is that going to feel? Please, for liability reasons, don't do that. But imagine, what kind of damage is that going to cause? Or another way then of visualizing it, let's say that I tie your hands behind your back and I take your legs out and you fall face first on your body. How much damage, or on your head or your nose, how much damage is that going to cause? And the honest answer is going to be, wow, that causes a lot of, that's really going to hurt. Exactly. That is my whole point, is that we have these little bumps, these little spills, and we oftentimes think nothing of it because on the outside, there doesn't appear to be any broken bones, any bleeding, or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that you can still not have the shockwave effect that works through your body and can actually cause damage in places where you didn't even realize that it happened. The same thing goes when you are in low-speed car accidents. So we think and always want to say, again, linear connections, that we have and we can suffer as human beings more damage with high-speed accidents. And in fact, this is a game oftentimes insurance companies like to play. They say, oh, it was just a low-speed accident, so there was no damage. No, no, no. You see, cars are designed that when you've got enough of an impact, the car will crumple. And if the car crumples, what it means is that the force of that collision was absorbed by the metal, by the frame, and doesn't go into you. On the other hand, with low-speed impacts, even those as slow, quote-unquote, as 20 miles an hour, what will happen is the car will not necessarily absorb that stress. And so basic physics, that force then will transmit into whatever object is inside of the car. Very interesting. Now, I also like to illustrate this in terms of, well, what's a little bit different in terms of us versus the guys who are like in IndyCar, NASCAR, Bathurst, different things like that. Those guys and women, when they are driving, they are in basically a custom-made seat, fit exactly to the side of their body. They're wearing a helmet, and that helmet is chained on the back of the head and the headrest. So they are driving with their head literally in this position the whole time. And even when they experience some of the horrific accidents that they do, you can see that car is designed to crumple around them. The cage is designed to protect them, but because they're wearing a helmet, because their head is locked into the back here, even at that speed, their head does not transmit and travel forward. On the other hand, you're driving backwards or you're just pulling out of a parking spot, somebody doesn't see you and they give you that tap on the bumper like this. You didn't see, you were looking the other way. If nothing's holding your head in place, there's the snap effect. And what did we say about the weak point? Zigzag, like that. Even the low speed, the 20 miles an hour, imagine the impact that's involved as if you were to fall flat on your face. We're now talking about the same kind of damage targeted directly to this area right here. So even though we may not necessarily have a direct head injury, we can still be experiencing the symptoms, but not because we've suffered a concussion. On the other hand, what we've done is we've actually suffered a whiplash injury. And it doesn't have to be caused by a car accident at all. No, whiplash is simply where your head and your neck snap forward and back or side to side. That can happen in a car accident. That can happen on a roller coaster. That can happen at a rock concert. And we also, we think of it happening in the contact sports like football, like hockey, but it actually happens to a lot of people who are not playing contact sports as well. Mountain biking, road biking, trail running. Why trail running? Because when you trip on a route, you've got the momentum, the speed of you moving your body, but then your head suddenly snaps back. And sometimes you stack it on the ground. How about skiing? How about water skiing? How about equestrian, horse riding? How about motorbike riding? How about soccer? Soccer? What do you mean soccer? Soccer isn't a contact sport. Oh, yes, it is. But you don't tackle people head on like this. Instead, what you do is you slide to tackle and get the ball. But sometimes you don't get the ball. You get the person who is playing. They were running with the ball. And what happens is they get their legs taken out from them like that and they go down like this. But this is the important thing as it relates to the soccer kind of injuries. When you fall sideways, you have the tendency to basically guard your body. Your arm goes out a little bit like that, and the force can get absorbed as you land on your shoulder. But guess what? There's a gap between your shoulder and your neck like this. And so if your shoulder hits the ground at a velocity with a sudden deacceleration to the tune of 22 miles an hour, your head will continue going in that same direction. There's the snap effect right there. The same thing can go for people who are divers, swimmers, and surfers if they ever smash their head into the pool, in the side, or on the bottom like that. Supposed quote-unquote non-contact sports, but ways that you can still suffer these head, neck, or even tailbone injuries. Because again, a fall direct on the tailbone produces a shockwave through the body, and that then can produce that stretching of the neck, which produces that stretching of the neural tissue. There is your whiplash kind of injury. And unfortunately, many times, again, people, even when they do, oh, I feel like I've strained my neck, they go to the emergency department and they're told, oh, no, nothing's wrong with you. We don't see any broken bones, no dislocations, no lacerations, no anything like that. Go home. Maybe it's just a low-grade concussion, but you'll be right. Unfortunately, that's what sets people up for further injury and damage, because we know from the research here that when people have suffered a pre-existing injury, what it does is it lowers their adaptive capacity. And what that means is it means that it doesn't take near as much stress, strain, force, or injury in the future to cause just as bad, if not more severe, symptoms the next time. So what that means is it means that most often when people have suffered, whether it's a concussion or a whiplash, that's not actually their first rodeo. It's that they had had some kind of pre-existing injury that had lowered their capacity, and now it took all of was that extra bit to push them over the edge. And unfortunately, it becomes accumulative, so the next time it takes even less stress. Next time even less, till unfortunately all it can be is where somebody takes a little bit of a smack, they hit their head on the back of a car door or on a dresser or on a cabinet door, and then suddenly it can send them in a tailspin, even though they may have had an initial head or neck injury going back about 10 years. My point being through all of this here, number one, is that there's a lot more to concussion whiplash injuries than initially meets the eye. It does not necessarily need to involve a direct head injury if your neck is snapped in the process. The question then is, are you actually having your neck properly assessed? Not just to make sure it's not broken or dislocated, but to make sure that all of the bits and pieces are actually sitting, moving, and functioning in the right way, so that you don't have any stress on the muscle, you don't have any stress on the ligament, you don't have any stress on the nerve. Because if any of those three conditions exist, what oftentimes people say, oh, it's just a soft tissue injury. That's the whole point. If that injury is there, what it's going to be doing is it's unfortunately going to accumulate over that period of time, as we described, and it can sometimes be days, weeks, months, years, even decades later, where the things start to show up, start affecting our healing, our well-being in ways where we either put it down to just getting stressed, just getting older, or that there's nothing that we can do about it, without realizing that what it actually is it's a manifestation of that old injury that we had to our neck that we never had properly resolved all the way back then. Now, if in this video you're hearing something and you're thinking, okay, wow, I really wish that I would have known about this information before, I would have been able to prevent, maybe some of all these problems that I've had. Still isn't necessarily too late. Yes, if you want to grow a tree, the best time to plant the seed was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So I do hope that by sharing this information in this video here, that you might find something, okay, I'm experiencing some brain fog, I'm experiencing some fatigue, I'm experiencing headaches, balance, vertigo. I wonder if it might be connected with fill in the blank in the past. Your body never forgets how to heal and is always doing the best it can to repair and improve you, take you up to higher qualities of living until your last breath. So as long as you're still breathing, I believe very much that there is still hope. So what we would have you do is, if we've had this video, number one, I always hope that you've enjoyed the content, you found it valuable, informative, but what do you do with it? So first and foremost, we always like if you like and subscribe to the channel here so you get this kind of information about how this little problem here is able to be solved and how we can help you out. Number two is, if you've got a friend and family member who you think might benefit from watching this, please do share this with them. But what do you do? with this particular information. So first thing we would recommend that you do is go to our website, so drjeffreyhanna.com, where you're going to find out a little bit more information with other videos just like this. What is it that's so special about these upper vertebrae in the neck, and what is it that we actually do in order to help that? In brief, what we do, it's called the Blair upper cervical technique. This is not the general form of spinal manipulation, twisting, cracking, that pushes joints into place. No, this is more of an unlocking of things. So what we do in the Blair technique is we recognize first and foremost every human being is different on both the outside and also on the inside. So in order to take those individual differences to account, we want to be able to measure your structure, the nature of your individual joints based on your anatomy, your genetics, and also the unique configuration about what's happened to you on the inside beyond just simply looking for pathology. Because with that information, we're able to design a procedure that's ultimately going to be just for you, completely personalized, to help unlock, restore the normal movement, which takes the stress and tension out of the neurology, out of the ligaments, out of the muscle. That is what ultimately allows your body to heal. And because all healing happens from the inside, this we find is one of those key and irreplaceable elements for helping people to recover from concussion and from whiplash injuries. So go over to our site again, drjeffreyhanna.com, where you find out a little bit more information about this. To find a Blair upper cervical chiropractor near you, what we'd have you do is we'd have you go to blairchiropractic.com. You'll be able to find a directory, whether it's in the continental US, whether it is abroad international. Find the nearest upper cervical Blair chiropractor near you. And if, of course, you are in the Spokane, Washington area, this is where we practice with the team with Clear Chiropractic. Go visit clearchirospokane.com or give us a call at 509-315-8166. That way you can get in contact with one of us, ask any questions you might have, and we'd be happy to help coordinate, schedule a time so that we can help actually do what we can to help improve your overall quality of life. So the number again, the proper time this time, 509-315-8166. So again, hope you've enjoyed this particular video. Like, subscribe, and please do share this so that this message can get out there to find other people who are experiencing this but may not have realized that what they think they're dealing with is a concussion, or maybe don't even realize yet, but it's actually a problem that's coming from your neck. Look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. So until the next time, this is Dr. Jeffrey Hanna at Clear Chiropractic. Get well, live well, stay well. Take care. Bye-bye.